Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of Big Finish audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week, and today on the 25th of January 2019. We are beginning the first story in a range of Big Finish productions, centering around ex-producer to Doctor Who, Philip Hinchcliffe, the Philip Hinchcliffe Presents range, with the first story in the first box set released. This was released in one box set, and then just two single releases afterwards, The Ghost of Gralstead with Part 1. And The Ghost of Gralstead begins rather interestingly enough with taking us right back to Victorian London, something that just really works as a setting for the Philip Hinchcliffe stories, and just as sort of a remembrance of Philip Hinchcliffe's era, that the setting of Victorian London always seemed to be just sort of right at the forefront of stories and of, just storytelling. Like it's very much the place to be if you want to have a spooky story in this time in Doctor Who's history. And The Ghost of Gralstead Part 1, what's interesting is that we start off with, well, some body snatchers, a good old-fashioned trope of people just, people just doing the, people just stealing bodies because that was just sort of a thing that people did to earn some money. Now what's interesting is that these body snatchers are complaining because this guy won't die in a very darkly comedic scene. And this bit of dark comedy is really, really well done. I really did enjoy the fact that, we're getting to this very, very dark place. It's like, well, look, this guy just won't die. We're trying to get him killed because, we're body snatchers, and we need to earn some money off of this corpse. But because this person will not die, well, there's nothing we can do about it. And it's darkly comic, and it works really, really well for this episode. It establishes almost a dark tone. But it also gives some exposition that there is a quack in town, basically a snake oil salesman, saying this Dr. McDivitt, who, a big part of the episode is the Doctor and Leela going to his show where they see this poor crippled girl with a mangled arm healed miraculously because this doctor has almost magical powers granted to him by God because he was allowed, he is faithful and allowed to, save people, mainly because, well, saving people is what he does. And one thing, it's this very striking sort of tone that, we aren't doing something good. What's nice is that also, The Ghost of Gralstead Part 1, it's kind of a slow burn, but I mean that in a very, very good way. It's dripping with atmosphere. We have these, three sets of characters, these body snatchers, this doctor who has, this thing where, they go to attack this doctor because they don't like him healing everybody, and while he attacks them back, his power doesn't like being, seeing people there. But there's also these people in this manor. This guy called Abassi, who is an African servant to a Sir Edward Scrivener, whose daughter has gone insane for 10 years. Has been insane for 10 years because her mother died, which is a very, very human connection for the story. The Ghost of Gralstead's, just sort of the human connections in the story are really solid. Like we already have this feeling that Sir Edward wants to be a good father and he wants to help his daughter Clemmy get over her problems, but he just can't because he doesn't know what to do. He's technically still grieving himself. He hides it under a very British stiff upper lip, let no emotion show, but there's still, the emotions are still there. He still very much cares for Clemmy as a daughter, and for his passed away wife. He takes Abassi away. Abassi's his servant because he cares for the man. The man was cast out from his tribe, and we're going to get more on Abassi later on in the story. But Sir Edward is generally a good person who cares. And this big ending is this portal opening, like an interdimensional portal, and that's our cliffhanger. And that's a striking cliffhanger. Just after we've got quite a lot with the Doctor and Leela going to this Dr. McDivitt. But also we have quite a lot of stuff between the Doctor and Leela. Like, this is, there's very much, references, Leela has realized she now feels comfortable calling herself a lady because Professor Lightfoot and Talons of Wang Chiang gave her the initiation test. And the doctor is like, well, if you say so, sort of in this very, yes, you are a lady, if you say so, almost making fun of the Victorian culture of the time of what makes a lady, a proper lady, what makes someone prim and proper, things like that, that I think are just really well done, and really well performed by Tom Baker. He does a really good job here. But also you have Leela still having her hunting senses, and even though she is in her Victorian gear, she's actually able to, fight. She and Abassi actually handle this really nice relationship as they're sort of two hunters who sort of have kindred spirits together. And it's really well done, really well written by Mark Platt and Philip Hinchcliffe. It's just this relationship that they form. That, they obviously, realize that, like, Abassi's been followed by someone, and there's just something deeper is going between the surface. Like, you have this freak show where this doctor is, and, something that the doctor almost finds appalling, but, like, doesn't. It's a very interesting way of portraying the doctor in that he doesn't initially seem to find the freak show the most appalling thing about Victorian London. He takes Leela there, and they have a good time at this freak show. It's really good done, and this is, oddly enough, by the end of the episode, it does the standard classic Who thing of getting us into Gralstead, where a lot of the next episodes are going to take place, and it's basically preparing us for this story, because we have 6 episodes to fill, but it doesn't do quite a lot of things that early part 1s of 6-parters do, and leave too much to the imagination. It gives us something to keep going, and it keeps us extremely interested in being extremely curious. It's like, okay, where's the story going from here? We've got to know. I'm very interested to see what's happening next. Who's the villain? What's this alien entity that might be existing? The body snatchers have their plot. That's an interesting plot. Sir Edward has a brother. He's might become interesting later. It's things like that where you have enough intrigue to get yourself interested in where the story's going, but not too much that, it's overfilled or underfilled. It's just the right amount of intrigue, and it's an amazing episode. So I'm going to give The Ghosts of Gralstead, Part 1, a 10 out of 10. It is the 26th of January 2019, and I just finished listening to Part 2 of The Ghosts of Gralstead. And Part 2 of The Ghosts of Gralstead is pretty famous because it has the plot of the story thickening quite a bit. In Part 2 of The Ghosts of Gralstead, we essentially, I don't want to say it's an extended chase, but it basically is an extended chase of finding this creature that escaped from the portal. Oddly enough, also you have this sort of second B-plot with Abassi's people, his African tribe, in Victorian London, attempting to kill him. Now, we don't quite get an explanation on why they want to kill him yet. The idea is that he was taken from his home when he was very, very young, by Cedric. I think I got the names of the brothers mixed up. Cedric is the one who owns the house. Edward is the one we meet later in this episode, who is a mortician, pathologist. More on him later, because he gets some interesting, very, very interesting things to do in this story later on, in the episode even. Now, what is very, very interesting is that you have the plot between Leela and Abassi is really a lot of fun, mainly because Leela, Philip Hinchcliffe and Mark Platt have sort of built up, it's almost this romance between the two characters. They very much care about each other because they sort of come from these similar walks of life, and they've, just have this spark where they sort of hit it off, and have, really good, solid interactions with each other, in a way that is just a lot of fun. The two characters work off of each other. In this episode, we also get a really good explanation as to what's wrong with Clemmy, that she's, since her mother died, she's essentially, she's gone insane, but Cedric doesn't want to put her in an insane asylum because, she's still her daughter, his daughter, and he still cares for her. But what's odd is that the doctor seems to realize that it isn't quite madness. She seems to be seeing things that she wouldn't be able to understand scientifically, like things from outer space, and aliens and things. Obviously, the ghost is an alien. They use ghost. The Doctor uses ghost, calls it a ghost because that's just the most practical definition of what this creature is. It's not, it's easier to explain that, oh, you're haunted by a ghost than, oh, you're haunted by an extra-dimensional alien from another being who has to feed to become human. And as just a lot of this is also chasing the ghost in the mausoleum. We don't really get. We don't know what the ghost is quite yet until near the very end of the episode, which is a very, very interesting. Again, a very interesting part of the plot is what this ghost actually is, what it means for our characters. Like why is there a creepy ghost haunting these halls? Why would anyone want a ghost haunting Gralstead? And a lot of the plot with Cedric is really good. He's he's very much the kindly father figure to Clemmy, who he wants to see his daughter safe and well and just back to sanity, even if he doesn't know what he's doing. He obviously has an estranged brother. Like we also get this big idea that Gralstead. The idea is that Gralstead as a house is cursed. They are suffering under a curse with, where anyone who lives in the house of the Scrivener family will die. Edward's the one who's the more realistic, like, oh, that's just silly. That's sort of the reason he's left the house, and lives on his own as a as a pathologist. That's what he does. He's a very interesting character and a very interesting foil for Cedric. This is a very much story of foils. Edward, we're introduced to him, and the ghost actually finds him out after in the old lady's poorhouse from part 1. Seeing the 2 body snatchers, they try to care for it basically till it dies. Then it kills a man and eats its brain in a very, very one of the first of very many disturbing sequences that this story is going to really have us under. And the sound design here is amazingly well done. Just like the slurping of the brain, it just evokes this creepy image. It's a very intense image. It's something that I think is really, really good, because Doctor Who can do really good things when it goes down into a level of just intensity, of an intense horror. I mean, like, yes, there's a crazy lady in the house. And just eating brains and things like that. Like it's dark. Yeah, it's very, very dark. A very dark story, a very dark episode. And I do not. I'm not complaining. That is very welcome. What's interesting is that the body snatchers, they sort of get their comeuppance here, and you sort of have this creature, this female creature. She's called Mordriga, played by Carolyn Seymour. Almost as like this Mephistophelian temptress, tempting Edward into like a partnership, like, ooh, you can help me, I can help you. Of course, Edward is the man wanting to do the science, in advanced science, which is why he pays the grave robbers for bodies. He gives them 5 guineas for Mordriga's body, because it's such a fascinating specimen, and something that, is just, ooh, it's so completely different. I must know what it really is. What does it really mean? Things like that. And I for one, really, really do enjoy just the acting of this story and that idea. And the big cliffhanger is really, really good, too. It's Leela and Abassi being attacked near the end. Again, this is an episode where we're partially doing our first real transition into the actual story. And I don't think, and that's not a complaint, a slow burner, again, can be good, and this is a story that needs a slow burner, because we're trying to flesh out these characters and give us something, realize it's something sinister, and ease us into this darkness, because we were getting hints of it, but it's only going to get darker from here, because, yeah, we're dealing with freak shows and, disfigured aliens, and various like, things like that. That's just, honestly, could be considered terrifying by any standards. It's Big Finish has done a really good job of creating just the atmosphere that, hey, this isn't a good, these aren't good people. These are complex people living in a story, and we're creating the story around them. Just because we need to have that sort of, we're getting a very, very real sense of, who these people are and where their story is going. And, we're only 2 parts into this, and we already have plenty of intrigue, and we're slowly unraveling the answers. Hinchcliffe and Platt do a really good job of not trying to leave the answers to part 6. They're giving us answers, but those answers make us ask more questions and sort of get us deeper into the plot, which is a very important tactic for telling a story, is that you want to start somewhere and then go deeper. Do a deep dive into why do these characters want to do this, what are these characters' motivations, why is X leading to Y. Basically that sort of structure. And that's something really, really good. So I'm going to give The Ghost of Gralstead, Part 2, another 10 out of 10. It is the 27th of January 2019, and I just finished listening to Part 3 of The Ghosts of Gralstead. And Part 3 of The Ghosts of Gralstead is perhaps continuing the tradition of good episodes in gothic horror of this story. Perhaps the best one yet. Mainly because, well, this is the first time we get to have our villain, and our villain is Mordriga, and working with Professor Edward Scrivener, and their dynamic is perhaps one of the best parts of the story, just as a whole. It's this almost parasitic relationship between them, though who's the parasite and who's the host is the real question, because they kind of both need each other, and they are both very, they're both trying to survive off of each other. It's a very Elephant Man sort of scenario, because Mordriga is completely deformed and demands live sustenance to survive. I'm not even joking. She's like, yes, I need to eat people to survive. I want people, give me people as soon as you can. Like, her feeding is eating people. Get me more brains. I don't care, just do it. So, of course, a lot of the plot is Edward trying to give this crazy woman, some new sustenance, which is, honestly, hilarious. The character, obviously, is dealing with a lot of scary shit. And just having to deal with a creature like this is honestly terrifying. It's a very, they build up the horror aspect of it, and Carolyn Seymour as Mordriga is really, really good at that. But there's also, you also get, this is the episode where we're really introduced to, I don't want to say the plot MacGuffin, but it basically is the plot MacGuffin of the story. The Corona of Alcyon is this crown that Cedric happened to have on his last expedition to Africa. He took a silver link from this crown and brought it back to London, and it basically can resurrect the dead. It's basically an alien artifact, and his butler, by accident, decided that it would be a good idea to sell it off for £15. And the Crown of Alcyon it's the MacGuffin that Mordriga wants. It's what the Doctor is trying to figure out, like, maybe that's what the ghost is. Because, again, the Doctor and Leela are still trying to figure out what the ghost is. There's a character who has died, who is perhaps in need of this corona to, keep itself living. It basically has unnatural powers, like just the silver link is what Gideon McDivitt, who bought it, the owner of the freak show, the quack who's been saving people, that's how he's been saving people. And it's Hinchcliffe and Platt do this really good job of just tying all these threads together. Like, these threads have had no right to really be tied back together, but hey, they are, and that's how life works. Like, they get the threads get tied back together, and we get to go back into a story where there is this common ground. Like, the characters make it back together. There's a lot of, just tying plot 1 back to plot 2. And I personally really have been enjoying it. It's a really good example of how to do this sort of plot and get the characters, from point A to point B in a reasonable amount of time. And there's this big, it seems that we're actually going to be going to Africa. But first, here's the thing: the episode ends, with Leela dead. It's a big halfway point of the story twist that Leela has been killed, which is odd. Now, we probably already know that she's going to come back to life, but the tension is still there, because it's like, wait, they don't have the corona. What does this mean for Leela as a character? Is she, even if she survives it somehow, how will she be changed? And it's things like that you really get the sense of, just about how big and expansive and almost dark this story is getting. It's getting very, very dark, because you have Mordriga wheeled around out in high society, and being, and basically being looked at gawked at by people, whilst Cedric is unable to figure out how to save the day and fix things. It's all, it's all characters doing multiple things to try to give us, a complete picture of the world. And eventually it's all futile, like our heroes' attempts have proven futile thus far. They're still working in the dark, and I haven't even talked about Tom Baker. He, as usual, is doing an excellent job. He has this amazing commanding presence in this role. It's obvious that he really enjoys this script. He enjoys having the darkness sort of to sink his teeth into and give us, give a good, solid performance. And not giving us more of the jokey Tom Baker, giving the more serious, solemn, and somber version of the character that is probably where he highlights his best, where he gives his best performances, is in that, just the solemnity of the version that was in seasons 13 and 14 mostly. He does a really, really good job here. So, everything is coming together very, very nicely into, just sort of to create this story about, all these people living in this rather scary house, and we are only halfway through it. So I'm going to give The Ghost of Gralstead Part 3 another perfect 10 out of 10. It is the 28th of January 2019, and I just finished listening to Part 4 of The Ghosts of Gralstead. And Part 4 of The Ghosts of the Gralstead does a lot of things. Mainly, it moves us away from Gralstead House and moves us towards Africa. First off, a lot of the first half of this episode, a lot of the episode is centered on London, with Gralstead House. Mainly, we're centering on Edward as he uses Mordriga essentially as a science experiment. She's essentially a sort of this, like, yes, I'm going to use you as an attraction, and in using you as an attraction, in doing so, I'm showing you off to these, other scientists and doctors and things, and, we are basically going to use each other in that way. We're not, this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship between the two of us because of that. That being said, that is it's an interesting way of doing things. Oddly enough, a lot of it is focused on, the two grave diggers and the lady owning the whorehouse get killed. The grave robbers kill her, bring her to Edward, and Mordriga eats her. Doesn't like it because it's carrion. She wants live, fresh meat, like meat that she kills herself, which is rather disturbing. Mordriga just in general becomes more and more disturbing, but once she eats, like, the two grave robbers, she's almost fulfilled and satiated, and can actually survive a little bit more on, live meat. And what's very, very interesting is Edward how Sir Edward sort of responds to this. Mainly, what he does is he does this sort of, he sort of justifies it to himself. He justifies to himself that if they are deaths in the name of science, and these deaths in the name of science, are something he shouldn't worry about, because it's extremely important that, the scientific method improves itself, and, life finds a way, and there's everything. This episode really sees Edward go down this path of almost a point of no return, down into almost the depths of his soul, to basically because he's trying to do he's basically getting himself down into the depths of despair. He's slowly going insane, acting like, all right, science is more important than anything, and trying to have Mordriga be a scientific discovery and explain her scientifically. That is my goal in life right now. I should be trying to give her, basically get her, the actual, give her, a chance at survival with science. And it's very, very dark where the story goes with her. She's not a sane character. She is completely insane, and pretty much just it's like, all right, I'm going to kill whoever I can, because I want the Corona of Alcyon. She attacks the Doctor and Leela, and honestly only stops when when she gets told, oh, you know about it, you might know where its whereabouts are, well, tell me more, you're useful to me, don't outlive your usefulness. She's this terrifying villain, and Edward sort of becomes more of a villain with her. Like, as soon as the Dr. Leela and Cedric and Abassi go off to Africa in the TARDIS, one of the few times even Leela remarks that, oh, the TARDIS works for you. You actually got the controls right for once. It's a miracle. It's almost a miracle, because it is a miracle. Obviously, I think the idea is that the Corona is actually drawing the TARDIS off course. Well, Edward gets Clemmy, goes to Gralstead, and basically holds Clemmy at ransom, holds the house at ransom. Clemmy knows where the link of the Corona is. It's on Cedric. He's got it with him. So there's no way of actually getting the Rodrigo actually getting the Corona. But she gets this amazing scene. She's much more intelligent than she should let on. She has the knowledge of, she knows, oh, this is a bit more, there's much less, sanity here. It's much more, it's much more, creepy factor of, she knows more than she's letting on, and she's a very intelligent character. And of course, moving to Africa, we are going to be getting a plot with Clemmy, with our main characters, with Abassi's people. We are actually going to flesh him out. And I just think it's amazing that Mark Platt and Philip Hinchcliffe are filling in these characters oh so very well. They are doing their best. They're creating very, very different characters with a lot with dynamics with each other. They have they have their interactions, and it's all just sort of an aim of trying to make the story the best that it can be. And I have to say that it works out very, very well. Of course, Tom Baker is also great, and Louise Jameson is also great. And again, this episode just continues this tension. Like, the tension keeps going, and it's an amazing through line. The Ghost of Gralstead it knows that it's like, hey, we have to do this story beat by beat. We got to keep going. If we don't keep going, it's not going. The story itself isn't going to, work out properly. We have to keep things moving along, or else we won't be able really to, we won't be able to continue. And just as an example of story structure, it does an amazing job, just as a plot. So I'm going to give The Ghost of Gralstead Part 4, another perfect 10 out of 10. It is the 29th of January 2019, and I just finished listening to Part 5 of The Ghosts of Gralstead. And when we talk about Part 5, I've decided I'd like to take a minute to discuss story structure, and why The Ghosts of Gralstead has an untraditional Doctor Who story structure, in comparison to other Doctor Who stories, as well as, just sort of for its audio, and yet why it works so well. Now, the Doctor Who six-parter, it goes two ways. One, for 50-50 split. There's sort of a midpoint climax at the end of episode 3. And then sort of falling action, then true climax near the end of episode 5 or beginning to middle of episode 6, sort of depending on the story. But then, that's just sort of how that works. Now, for the other traditional structure is the 4 and 2 structure. Most traditionally, you'll see these with stories like the Seeds of Doom, the Talons of Wang Chiang, the Armageddon Factor, I believe. Things like that. They essentially split the episodes between 4 and 2. At the end of the block of 4, there's a climax. At the end of the block of 2, there's a climax. And the climax shifts the story in a different direction. Now, sometimes the 2 comes first, with the case of, like, Seeds of Doom. Sometimes the 2 comes second, with the case of, like, Talons of Wang Chiang. This is also one... Sensorites, way back in the 1960s, did this structure. I believe I talked about it. It's a pretty famous structure. Now, The Ghost of Gralstead is interesting because it doesn't have this structure. Now, either of these structures. It's actually structured more like a novel. And for once, and you know what? For a 6-parter, on audio, that actually works. There's a steady increase of the stakes. Basically leading up to the end of Part 5. Now, Part 6 is stakes are the biggest. Part 5, we're in Africa. A lot of the Part 5 is spent in Africa, with where a lot of our characters will undergo sort of their quote-unquote arcs, their finishings of their arcs. Mainly, Cedric has to reconcile himself with his dead wife, and will learn to let her go in a gorgeous moment. It's amazingly well done. Hamish Cleveland Platt crafted an amazing script behind it. Because, of course, the Corona of Alcyon allows people to come back to life, and they can stay alive if they choose, but Cedric's wife doesn't want to. She's ready to die. She didn't want to come back. She was forced back. Not because of Cedric's, poor planning. It just sort of happened. And things like that. It's this amazingly emotional moment. We also get a lot of the episode, however, focuses on Abassi and his sort of reclaiming of his birthright. Now, he was a prince of an African tribe. Now it's run over by this warlord who killed his father, and we have sort of a revenge tale. And we sort of get that plotline finished throughout this episode. Amazingly well done. Mark Platt does an amazing job, and Philip Schnickel, of making these characters feel alive. You really feel for the politics of the tribe. We are a long way from the caveman politics of an unearthly child. Like, these politics are real. They feel like real people. They feel like these people have actual demons to fight. And actually there's stakes here. And Leela is willing to help Abassi take on the trial too, because they are kindred spirits. We also have Leela let him down easy. She doesn't love him. She still wants to travel with the Doctor, and it's amazingly satisfying. Because there were feelings there. Like, you really, really felt that the characters, could have made it together. Like, they had a chemistry. There was that little spark of character between the two of them that, I really love. Louise Jameson, of course, does it amazingly. You also have Abassi coming to terms with his birthright and his mother, who died and was resurrected. Again, this African warlord essentially resurrects women and people. Resurrects men just to kill them again because he gets the disc cluster, and women to be his, I think concubines is probably the best way of putting it. But yeah, it's really dark. and I love it. Like, it's amazingly well done. Again, we are building to a climax with all these characters, and this has been building since the beginning. Even back in London, the climax with Edward and Mordriga is, climaxing. Edward has Gralstead in his clutches. He has the house. He has gone almost insane enough to believe that, yes, Mordriga is, the one I should be trusting, and, she will help me with medical science. As long as I keep giving her flesh, I will become all powerful. So, we're building up to this, and it's all amazing. Philip Hinchcliffe and Mark Platt have done an excellent job at just making the characters not only feel real, but act real as well. Like, they act, so good together. You also get a lot of explanations of what the corona is. It's from a different dimension. It doesn't follow the rules of our universe. And you know what? The Doctor wants to help Mordriga. He understands her plight. Of course, she's probably not going to, actually accept his help because she's the villain. But she is, she's a really solid character. She knows, what, she knows, the Doctor knows that, what she's sort of gone through, that, she's gone through this pain and suffering of being in a universe that doesn't care about her. That being said, she is still a fun and interesting and excellently well done character. She does a lot of stuff. She is, it's all stuff like this that really comes together to make The Ghost of Gralstead an amazing piece of audio. It's one of the best big finishes in their library so far, and we're only on part 5. That's just how good it is. So I'm going to give The Ghost of Gralstead part 5 another perfect 10 out of 10. All right, it is the 30th of January 2019, and I just finished listening to part 6 of The Ghost of Gralstead. This is the final episode, and the one in which Mordriga's plans, I don't want to say come to fruition, but yeah, they sort of come to fruition. Mainly because, well, they are plans to get the corona. You have the characters all coming back to find basically a party happening on, with the characters. Like, there is this, it's one of the sort of viewing parties. View the disfigured woman, almost like a freak show. Again, much like stuff to deal with, stuff dealing with, the stuff at the very beginning, stuff comes back at the very end. Really, it gives you a way to sort of see the story concluded. You have the characters who are given basically all, a decent amount of characterization, and they all sort of finish the story together. You have this big war raging on between Mordriga and Polita, who's this sort of dead character who has been talked about quite a bit, but he doesn't actually appear. And basically getting the crown to him is what will... it's basically what causes everything to survive. The point is that, the crown... The Corona of Alcyon has to get to Polito, or else, the characters aren't going to survive. And, we don't want to have the characters not surviving. And you really also have the destruction of, Edward. He really falls completely, not into despair, but yeah, into despair by this point. He, realizes, he doesn't quite so much realize the error of his ways, but he does realize that, that Mordriga wasn't there to help him in the beginning. That's not her point. It's, she's still very much a character who just, will not, who isn't going to be able to survive. She's, just sort of there, actually. She really doesn't, she doesn't give us a final answer. She's just sort of, she ends up, sort of failing. She fails, and it's really, really satisfying to see her fail, just because she has been sort of the thorn in our characters' sides for such a long time. Like, she is, just this big bad villain. And really, there isn't much to say about this finale because it's just so good. It's, it finishes up. Part 5 was our climax. This is our resolution. We resolve things quickly. Tom Baker does an amazing job. There's an amazing gag where it's like, "Oh, quiet, Lady Mordriga. You may disturb people. There are ladies present." Then Leela just runs, "Where?" Like, wait. And of course, I think he's referring to Leela, who is, throughout the story, has called herself a lady. Things like that just really, really work as a story. So it really, it helps, just the characterization and the story, come to a conclusion. It's very much, a conclusion based on that we have, the characters getting from point A to point B in this manner, and I think it's just really, really well done. The characters, all have really good characterization. They all give, they're all giving their best, and you have a really good sense of finality. Like, Cedric decides to take Clemmy on his next expedition, and he decides, "I'm going to go to India. No more African expeditions. Let's go somewhere else. Let's see a different part of the world." And I think that's just amazingly well done. It really, it makes the story feel completed. It feels like a good, solid conclusion. It's a satisfactory ending. So that being said, I'm going to give The Ghost of Gralstead Part 6 another perfect 10 out of 10. And we average up the scores to give The Ghost of Gralstead a final score of a perfect 10 out of 10. Thank you everybody for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And join me next time when we continue Philip Hinchcliffe Presents with the next story in the first box set, The Devil's Armada.